Welcome back to the State of the Nation address for the year 2026. My name is Faraz Patel. I would like to thank you, the viewer from Hilaal TV, for joining us here. Let me welcome my next guest. He's a Member of Parliament for ActionSA, Athol Trollip. Athol, always good having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Farad. Thanks very much for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Athol, your expectations from the President for tonight?
I want to make a disclaimer, first of all, to say it's difficult not to be skeptical and jaundiced, because we've heard 8 from Cyril Ramaphosa. It's his 9th this evening. And we're still waiting for a smart city, a bullet train, science and technology university in Ekurhuleni, and Tinswalo is still out of work and can't get NSFAS funding. So I am a bit skeptical.
The Madlanga Commission. ActionSA has been very vocal about where the Madlanga Commission is going. We heard testimony from Paul O'Sullivan yesterday. There is this interim report that's out, and yet the public's frustrated because every single day the criminal justice system continues to be compromised and undermined. Where are we getting in terms of that from an opposition perspective, especially from an ActionSA one?
Well, look, first of all, the Zondo Commission has been swept under the carpet. Those were the days when the ANC had an outright majority. The Madlanga Commission and the ad hoc committee's work isn't going to be able to be swept under the carpet. That's clear. So we hope that will be a watershed in this country. But we've got a president who's impervious to pressure. If there isn't enough pressure now to fire Minister Mkunu, then he's never going to get fired. You yourself have just mentioned a few police officers have been identified to be prosecuted, but nothing about the minister. So we have a president who has got the biggest cabinet in the world, does not hold his ministers to account, doesn't fire those that he should, fired Andrew Whitfield, who was the deputy minister, who was about the only deputy minister that shouldn't have been fired because he was doing a good job. And that's the problem. So we in ActionSA believe that we have a lame duck president, and the fact that he's coming towards the end of his term makes it even more problematic for us, because he's not going to be making any bold new moves, because it's not really in his interest. He's going out in a year or two. So certainly by 2027. So we're not holding our breath. I don't know if you want me to tell you what I expect to hear from him.
No, but here's my thing, is that a lot of what the public's looking at is what's happening with the Madlanga Commission. Because on the onset, if it wasn't for Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi coming out and actually mentioning the rot that we see within the criminal justice system, nothing would have been done from a governmental level. Is this where we are right now? Because it seems as if everything requires a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point that you've made, because General Mkhwanazi had to have that very high-profile and some people say controversial press conference to say what he did, to get that knee-jerk reaction from the president. He was in Parliament in March. And he told the parliamentarians in the Portfolio Committee exactly what he told the country in that press conference. But Parliament was asleep. Government was asleep. Government has become so accustomed to just going along to get along. So I think the Madlanga Commission is going to become a watershed. And I think the ad hoc committee is also going to provide some direction in what we must do with the criminal justice system and the South African police services. It is rotten to the core. I was talking to Chester Missing this morning, and he said, what do you call a policeman who isn't in Kat Matlala's pocket? And I couldn't answer him, and he said, unemployed.
Athol, in terms of where the country is from a sort of unemployment perspective, there comes your next worry, because we are tipping around the 40% mark.
Yeah,
and where do we get to supposedly drawing the line and saying, is the current government doing enough to go ahead and actually solve the sort of unemployment issue, which I know ActionSA has been really vocal about?
So the GNU partners haven't done a really good job at holding the ANC president's feet to the fire about changing policy and doing something about unemployment. But the ANC's president and the president of the country have been given a mandate by the last National General Council meeting that they need to focus on 2 things between now and the local government election. The first one is to fix local government, and the second one is unemployment. Those are 2 focus areas that he has been mandated to deal with. Now, ironically, they're the two areas where the ANC has performed worse in the last 30 years. I mean, they really have allowed local government to just completely decay, and unemployment is going through the roof. Now, an illustration of how out of touch our government is, as Panyaza Lusufi yesterday said,
Yes.
the water outages in Gauteng affect everybody indiscriminately. He said, even I had to go and shower at a hotel. Now,
what is your take on that? Because if you're a resident of Gauteng, you're a resident of the city of Johannesburg, and a sort of a premier says something like that.
it's Marie,
yeah.
it's Marie Antoinette-esque, where she said, if they're hungry, give them cake. That's the kind of response we get from the ANC. They've become so arrogant and inured to the pain that people have to endure on a daily basis. And the worst thing is that the Vaal River system is overflowing. We've had flooding there.
Yes.
So the Vaal River system's full of water, but no one in Gauteng's got water in their taps. It's time to change this government. So local government, fixing it, remains to be seen. But the elections are around the corner. This year is an election year where people are going to remove the ANC from
Yeah, well,
government.
this is what I wanted to ask you. So, of course, you are a senior member within ActionSA. What is ActionSA's plan from being a coalition partner to having outright majority in the metros? Now, obviously, Ikuruleni, a representative, has been announced for ActionSA. We await, obviously, Tshwane and the city of Johannesburg. But those are going to be the highly contested metros, and not taking away, obviously, the other metros within other parts of the country, but the three within Gauteng. What is ActionSA's plan in terms of being the coalition partner to an outright majority party?
Okay, so look, I don't think we're going to get any outright majorities in any of the metros, even in Cape Town. I think the DA might lose their majority. So our objective is to be a component in a coalition government that no other party can govern without us. So we need to get a critical mass of support. Nasipi Moya will be our candidate in Tshwane. She's the incumbent. She'll be the candidate. And you know, I can make an illustration for you. We talk about water in Gauteng. So there are a couple of things you can do. You can do what Helen Zille did. She sat in a water puddle to show how much water was being wasted. You could be like Panyaza Lusufi and go and take a shower in a hotel. Or you can be like Nasipi Moya, who's actually doing things to turn that city around, fixing water reservoirs, being on the job. She's made a name for herself in just over a year. She's become a household name. She had a birthday not so long ago in the last week, and she was just inundated with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of messages. So South Africans are hungry to see people in government who are seen to be doing things, not just talking about doing things.
You mentioned Dr. Nasipi Moya, and obviously in the media space, the sort of unbiased approach to it, but the credit where credit needs to be given due. And Dr. Moya has shown that within the city of Tshwane. Is that, from an ActionSA's perspective, a sort of blueprint for how metros need to be run?
Yeah, look, we've learned a lot. We're a 5-year-old party. We made some mistakes. We were involved in the multi-party charter, and we discovered that the DA was double dating us with the ANC during that process. Herman Mashaba himself, and he's not embarrassed about it, he said, we'll never work with the ANC. And then you realize that in a situation or in a country where one party gets a majority, that you have to be pragmatic. Now, we work in Tshwane with the ANC and the EFF. They're not our natural bedfellows, but that is what we had to work with. And you've just got to get on and work. And I must give Nasipi Moya credit for incorporating those two parties into her team, and her team of MMCs are turning Tshwane around. Nobody can gainsay that. Look at the numbers, look at the Auditor General's figures, the fact that we're paying back billions of rand to Eskom. Things are turning around there. So I think it's a good example to South Africans to say the days of being so parochial and say, we won't work with that party and I'm too pure to work with that one. You've got to work with what people give you and what voters give you. And voters have clearly told South African politicians and parties that we're not going to give you majorities anymore, because you waste that majority, you become too arrogant. So I think we're going through a very interesting time, and we must pick examples of where coalitions work and then try and replicate that.
What would it take for ActionSA, Athol, to be tempted by the government of national unity from a national level? Has that ever crossed the mind of anyone from ActionSA?
Look, I think we were exceedingly blessed that we took the decision not to go into the GNU. The GNU's got 70% of parliament. They don't need another 1% from a 6-member party. We would have just got lost there. We would have been tarred with the same brush as the ANC, and those parties that are in the GNU are going to get hammered this evening because it's their first year in the full year of GNU. They're going to get hammered for unemployment. They're going to get hammered for lack of water. They're going to get hammered for the fact that we cannot control this foot and mouth disease, which is decimating the only industry in this country that is growing, the only industry.
30 seconds, just to wrap it up, in terms of what is it that ActionSA is going to be doing in the next year to convince the voters that you are the party to go ahead and run your metro and municipality?
We're going to convince them through action, and we're going to show them that when I was mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, things worked. When Herman was the mayor of Joburg, things worked. And Nasipi is a living example of things working. That's what we're going to give South Africans. And we'll tell South Africans we'll work with any political party that will work with us.
Athol Trollip, always good having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
That's Athol Trollip, our Member of Parliament for ActionSA. Do stay tuned to the State of the Nation right here on Hilaal TV.